Shohei Ohtani signed the richest contract in professional sports history, $700 million, and then delivered 2 consecutive World Series championships for the Los Angeles Dodgers. He has shattered records that stood for a century, drawn comparisons to Babe Ruth, and forced an entire sport to rethink what a single human being is capable of doing on a baseball diamond. And through all of it, the man barely says a word. Shohei Ohtani communicates through an interpreter. He avoids the media on days he is not pitching. A former manager with the Los Angeles Angels once said if Shohei did not like one of his managers, no one would know. The man keeps his head down, he watches, and he lets his bat and his arm do all the talking. Until the summer of 2026, until a 25-year-old catcher named Dalton Rushing pushed the quietest superstar in baseball history to do something nobody had ever seen him do before. This is the story of the night Shohei Ohtani finally spoke. To understand why that night in Minneapolis mattered so much, you first have to understand that Ohtani's silence is not shyness. It is a deliberate, philosophical choice about how to carry himself in the world. It started long before Los Angeles. During 6 seasons with the Angels, Ohtani played alongside Mike Trout, another generational talent, on teams that never made the postseason. He had 4 different managers in those 6 years. Pundits asked constantly whether his career was being wasted, whether his decision to sign with the Angels over the Yankees and the Padres had been a mistake. Ohtani responded the way he always does. He said he trusted his instincts to make the best decision for him at the time, and that he did not regret it. Then he went out and won 2 American League Most Valuable Player awards, earned a World Baseball Classic Most Valuable Player, and quietly built the case that he was the most talented baseball player anyone had ever seen. His childhood in Japan shaped this discipline. His family deliberately avoided giving him a privileged upbringing. Even when Ohtani was earning the equivalent of $2 million a year as a teenager in Nippon professional baseball, his mother did not want him spending more than $1,000 on his living expenses. The lesson was clear: stay grounded, stay quiet, let the work speak. When the gambling scandal involving his former interpreter and close friend Ippei Mitsuhara exploded in the spring of 2024, the entire baseball world waited for Ohtani to speak. $4.5 million had been wired from his accounts to an illegal bookmaker. The story dominated every sports network for weeks. And Ohtani handled it the same way he handles everything. He sat in front of reporters with his new interpreter, Will Ayrton, and spoke for 12 minutes. He did not take questions. He said what needed to be said, and nothing more. He called himself very saddened and shocked. He denied ever gambling on sports. He said Ippei had been stealing money from his account and had told lies, and then he went back to playing baseball. No drama, no leaks, no follow-up interviews designed to shape public opinion. Just silence, and then performance. His Dodgers manager, Dave Roberts, once tried to explain the contradiction. He said that Ohtani is extremely private, but that naturally he is a goofy person, he is fun-loving, he is a crazy good competitor. Roberts said that when Ohtani sees people around him having fun and enjoying themselves, he opens up. But that openness is rare, it is earned, and it is never loud. The baseball world got a glimpse of this during the 2024 postseason. It was the first October of Ohtani's career, and the intensity of playoff baseball seemed to unlock something inside him. When he scorched a line drive off the right field fence in Game 1 of the World Series against the Yankees, he popped up from his slide at second base and roared toward his teammates. He implored the sold-out Dodger Stadium crowd to join him. It was raw, unfiltered, and completely out of character. His teammates noticed. Dodgers reliever Alex Vesia said they had seen his emotions grow over the year, and that it was just him becoming more and more himself and being comfortable showing it. But even in those moments of visible joy, Ohtani maintained a kind of regal discipline. MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred once described Ohtani as having a regal bearing. The cameras are always on him, but his demeanor stays positive, controlled, measured. He celebrates. But he celebrates with grace. He competes, but he competes without cruelty. He wins, and then he bows. There is perhaps no better example of Ohtani's composure than what happened in San Diego during the 2025 season. The Dodgers and Padres rivalry had been simmering all year, and during a particularly heated series, Padres reliever Robert Suarez drilled Ohtani with a 100-mile-per-hour fastball to the back. The pitch appeared intentional. Suarez was ejected. The Dodger Stadium crowd erupted. Both benches looked ready to storm the field. In almost any other scenario in baseball, this is where the brawl begins. 100 miles per hour to the back. Intentional, the biggest star in the sport. Every teammate in the dugout is ready to fight. Ohtani waved them off. He waved off his own dugout. Then he walked over to the Padres' dugout and had a calm conversation. No shouting, no posturing, just a quiet word. The man who had just been drilled with a fastball chose peace. Later that same series, a fan sitting near the visitors' dugout at Petco Park had been heckling Ohtani relentlessly throughout an entire game. Ohtani went 0 for 10 with a couple of walks through the first 2 games of the series. The heckler had plenty of material. Then in the 9th inning, Ohtani launched his 45th home run of the season deep to center field. As he rounded the bases and approached the dugout, instead of celebrating with his teammates first, he veered left. He walked directly toward the heckler, a Padres fan wearing a Fernando Tatis Jr. jersey, and offered him a high five. The fan obliged, somewhat sheepishly, and sank back into his seat. Ohtani patted him on the back, turned around and walked into a shower of sunflower seeds from Teoscar Hernandez. Roberts was laughing in the dugout. He told reporters afterward that it was very out of character from Shohei, but the heckler had been wearing him out the whole game. Roberts said it was good to see Shohei show his personality. That is Ohtani's version of confrontation. A high five, a pat on the back, a smile, even his retaliation is elegant. So when you hear what happened on June 24th, 2026 at Target Field in Minneapolis, you have to understand it against that backdrop. You have to understand that for Shohei Ohtani to show visible frustration with a teammate on a baseball field, for him to essentially take control of a game away from his own catcher, for him to speak openly to reporters afterward about what went wrong, something extraordinary had to have happened. Something named Dalton Rushing. Dalton Wayne Rushing was born on February the 21st, 2001 in Brighton, Tennessee. He was a high school star who batted .491 with 11 home runs and 46 runs batted in as a senior, earning all-state honors. But despite those numbers, he went undrafted in the 2019 Major League Baseball draft. So he enrolled at the University of Louisville to play college baseball. There was just one problem. Louisville already had a starting catcher, a guy named Henry Davis, who would go on to be selected first overall in the 2021 draft by the Pittsburgh Pirates. Rushing had to move to first base. He waited. He played 28 games in 2021, hitting .254 with 4 home runs. Then he went to the Cape Cod League, one of the most prestigious summer collegiate leagues in the country, where he played for the Bourne Braves. On Cape Cod, Rushing batted .314 with 6 home runs over 118 at-bats and was named a league all-star. Scouts who had overlooked him 2 years earlier suddenly had him circled in red. That summer changed everything. The Dodgers selected him in the second round of the 2022 draft, number 40 overall, betting that his left-handed power and defensive instincts could anchor their catching position for a decade. From the moment Rushing entered professional baseball, his bat was undeniable. In his first real minor league stint with the Rancho Cucamonga Quakes, he hit .424 with 8 home runs and 30 runs batted in just 28 games. Those are video game numbers. He was selected for the 2023 All-Star Futures game. He climbed through the system, reaching AAA Oklahoma City, By 2024, the Dodgers believed in him so much that they even experimented with playing him in left field to keep his bat in the lineup on days he was not catching. But Rushing's bat was never the question. The question was everything else. He arrived in the big leagues on May 14, 2025, when the Dodgers selected him to the 40-man roster and promoted him from AAA. He made his debut the following day as the starting catcher against the Athletics, recording his first Major League Baseball hit in his second plate appearance. On May 31st, he hit his first career Major League home run off Pablo Reyes of the New York Yankees. But the honeymoon was short. In 53 games, he batted just .204 with 4 home runs and 24 runs batted in. The speed of the Major League game, the quality of pitching, the mental grind of catching every day for a contending team, the pressure of playing for the defending World Series champions, all of it weighed on him. He made one postseason appearance. He watched from the dugout as the Dodgers won their second consecutive championship. He learned, or at least everyone hoped he was learning. Then 2026 arrived, and Dalton Rushing came out swinging. In April, he was one of the hottest hitters in baseball, batting .341 with 7 home runs. He hit a grand slam against the New York Mets on April 15th, his first career grand slam. Before that at bat, Ohtani, who was resting from his designated hitter duties that day, had given Rushing a simple instruction. He told him to hit a homer for him, and Rushing did exactly that. It was a moment of connection between the quiet superstar and the fiery young catcher. Ohtani believed in him. The Dodgers believed in him. The future looked bright. But the controversies started almost immediately. On April 18th, after a 4-3 loss to the Colorado Rockies at Coors Field, Rushing made comments to reporters that raised eyebrows across the league. He implied that the Rockies might be cheating, saying he thought it was odd that some of their hitters went up there and were on the first pitch that was thrown. He called it a little fishy. The baseball world reacted swiftly. The Rockies were statistically the most aggressive first-pitch swinging team in baseball. Their swing rate on first pitches was 38.4%, the highest in the majors. They had scored only 4 runs on 7 hits with no home runs that night. Dave Roberts did not find the loss fishy at all. He said he saw some bad breaking balls and put the blame on his own team. But Rushing had planted a flag. He was not going to be quiet. Days later, during a game against the San Francisco Giants, things escalated further. Giants outfielder Jung-Hoo Lee came barreling toward home plate on a close play, sprinting from third base and colliding hard with Rushing at the plate. Lee appeared to injure himself badly on the play. As Rushing walked away from the collision, cameras caught him appearing to mouth expletives in Lee's direction. The clip spread across social media within minutes. He later said his words were misconstrued, that he was not directing profanity at the injured player, but the damage was done. The baseball world had already made up its mind. 2 days later, in the final game of the series, Giants pitcher Logan Webb hit Rushing with a pitch in what many believed was an act of retaliation for the Lee collision. Rushing responded not by taking his base quietly, but by making a hard, aggressive slide into Giants shortstop Willie Adams on a double-play ball later in the game. After the final out, Adams's teammate Luis Arraez publicly called Rushing out for the slide, saying it was unnecessary and dangerous. The incidents kept piling up. Rushing broke his bat over his knee during a game against the Giants after a frustrating at-bat. In a game against the Marlins, he was called out on an automatic strike 3 after failing to get a timeout. When The Athletic profiled him about his growing reputation, Rushing did not back down. He said he thought guys had started to give him the label of villain. He said he was competing at the highest level and would not allow any outside source to get in his way. He said he was not going to change his game. This was the Dalton Rushing that Shohei Ohtani was about to catch for. To be clear, for most of the 2026 season, Ohtani's primary catcher had been 3-time All-Star Will Smith. The partnership between them was not just functional, It was extraordinary. In 10 starts with Smith behind the plate, Ohtani posted a 0.74 earned run average with 67 strikeouts in 61 innings. Those numbers are not just good. They are historically elite. They represent the kind of pitcher-catcher synergy that takes years to develop, the kind where a glance replaces a conversation, where instinct fills the gaps between pitch signals. Smith knew Ohtani's tendencies, his rhythms, his preferences in different counts against different hitters. He knew when to challenge umpires and when to let a borderline call go. He knew when Ohtani wanted to attack and when he wanted to nibble. The two were perfectly synchronized, a partnership built on thousands of pitches thrown and received in trust. But in June, Smith went on the injured list with neck inflammation. And suddenly, the job of catching the best pitcher on the planet fell to a 25-year-old sophomore with a reputation for running hot and a batting average that had cratered from 341 to 218 since his blazing April. Ohtani's first 2 starts with Rushing behind the plate were not disasters, but they were not smooth either. The chemistry was off. The pitch-calling rhythm was disrupted. Where Ohtani had been dominant with Smith, he was merely good with Rushing. His ERA climbed. The Dodgers noticed but said nothing publicly. Roberts called it a work in progress. Then came June 24th. The Dodgers traveled to Minneapolis for a series against the Minnesota Twins. Target Field had announced its first sellout of the season, largely because fans in Minnesota wanted to see Ohtani pitch in person. 81 games into the season, the Dodgers held the best record in baseball at 51-29, with a 9-game cushion in the National League West. Everything was going right. The machine was humming, and nobody in that sold-out stadium could have predicted what was about to unfold between the pitcher's mound and home plate. The game started unevenly. In the bottom of the second inning, the Twins loaded the bases with 1 out on 3 consecutive singles off Ohtani. The tension was already building. Then came the at-bat that changed everything. Ryan Kreidler stepped into the box. Ohtani's first pitch was called a ball on a low sweeper. Ohtani believed it was a strike. He wanted to use the automated ball-strike system to challenge the call. This was unusual. In 2026, out of nearly 5,000 challenges issued across baseball, pitchers accounted for only about 100 of them. Catchers typically handle challenges because they see the pitch from a similar angle to the umpire. But Ohtani wanted the challenge. And Rushing shook his head. He appeared to advise against it. Ohtani challenged anyway. The call was overturned. He was right. What happened next was the moment that went viral. Ohtani had called for 2 pitches during the at-bat. The first was an off-speed pitch. The second was a fastball. But Rushing had gotten confused about the sequence. He thought the second pitch was also off-speed. Ohtani delivered a fastball at 101 miles per hour. Rushing was not set for it. The ball hit off his glove and shot toward the backstop. A run scored. Ohtani winced, his shoulders slumped, and for one of the only times in his career, he showed visible frustration that was directed not at himself, not at an umpire, but at the man behind the plate. The inning eventually ended with 3 runs scored. 2 of them were earned. Rushing was charged with a passed ball. The damage was done, but the real story was just beginning. When Ohtani walked back to the mound for the bottom of the 3rd inning, something had changed. He was no longer looking to Rushing for pitch calls. He was punching in his own selections on the PitchCom device strapped to his wrist. Shohei Ohtani, the man who never takes control away from others, the man who defers and trusts and stays silent, was calling his own game. The results were immediate and devastating. Ohtani struck out the side in the 3rd inning. Byron Buxton, one of the most dangerous hitters in the American League, went down swinging. Cody Clemens went down. Josh Bell went down. 3 up, 3 down, all on strikes. The stadium fell quiet. From the 3rd inning through the 6th, Ohtani retired 13 of the 15 batters he faced. His fastball averaged a career-high 100 miles per hour for the start. He finished the night with 6 innings pitched, 5 hits, 3 runs with 2 earned, 2 walks, and 8 strikeouts on 89 pitches. The Dodgers won 4-3, completing a 3-game sweep. But while Ohtani was dominating on the mound, the scene in the dugout told a different story. Between innings, Rushing was surrounded. Manager Dave Roberts sat with him for an extended conversation. Pitching coach Mark Pryor put his arm around him. First baseman Freddie Freeman came over. Mental skills coach Bren Walker joined them. 4 people, all trying to keep the young catcher from spiraling. Rushing went 0 for 4 at the plate that night with 3 strikeouts and a foul pop-out. Both sides of the ball had been a disaster. And then came the moment that mattered most. The moment when Shohei Ohtani talked. After the game, speaking through interpreter Will Ayrton, Ohtani addressed what had happened. And while his words were measured, for a man who almost never says anything remotely critical about anyone, they were seismic. He said that there are really 2 ways of communicating. One is by words, but the other way is by example, by taking the charge and showing Rush what kind of pitching style he is capable of. He said that in an ideal world, he wants to be in a place where both of them can pitch in and really be able to shine because they have very different talents. On the surface, it sounds diplomatic. It sounds like classic Ohtani, but read it again. He said he had to show Rushing by example. He said he had to take the charge. He was saying, in the most Ohtani way possible, that his catcher had failed to understand him, and so he had to take the game into his own hands. He also spoke about what went wrong specifically. He said the in-game flexibility, reading the swings, reading how the hitters were taking their approach during the game. That is how he sees where adjustments need to happen. He said he personally realized they just had to be better at communicating throughout the game. He acknowledged feeling hesitation about the pitches Rushing was calling early in the outing. For any other player, these comments would barely register. For Shohei Ohtani, they were the equivalent of slamming a table. Rushing, for his part, was devastated. He sat in front of his locker after the game and did not hold back. He called the performance embarrassing. He said it was a good thing Ohtani was as good as he is, and that he could take control of the game, but called the whole situation pretty embarrassing. He said his teammates always had his back, and that once again, it was embarrassing that he needed that kind of support. He said he was a grown man, and it was a pretty tough pill to swallow. Roberts tried to contextualize it. He said he did not think having Ohtani take over the pitch calling was a blow to Rushing's ego. He said he actually thought it freed Rushing up. He said that if there is ever any doubt, the pitcher always has the right of last refusal and can call his own game. Roberts said that once they made that decision, things were pretty clean after that. He also offered a broader assessment of where Rushing stood as a player. He called it a work in progress. He said there is a learning curve for everything, and that Rushing was still trying to find his way in the big leagues, still trying to perform offensively. When asked about Rushing's emotional tendencies, the viral moments, the bat breaking, the confrontations, Roberts was candid. He said he did not think Rushing thinks he is going to go viral in the moment. He said that sometimes Rushing just kind of sees red. But he understands that there are consequences to actions, and he is aware of that. But everybody knew this was more than just one bad inning. This was a pattern. This was a young player who had been running on adrenaline and bravado since opening day, and who had just run headfirst into the one teammate who would not tolerate it. Not because Ohtani was angry, not because Ohtani wanted to punish him, but because Ohtani operates on a level of precision and intentionality that simply cannot coexist with chaos. In 3 starts with Rushing behind the plate, Ohtani's ERA had ballooned to 4.34. With Will Smith, it had been 0.74. The numbers told a story that no amount of diplomatic language could obscure. The greatest pitcher in baseball was significantly worse when Dalton Rushing was his catcher. The days that followed were intense. Roberts said the Dodgers had multiple conversations with Rushing ahead of Ohtani's next start. The coaching staff was not going to let this fester. Pitching coach Mark Pryor said that Rushing cares deeply about his pitchers, and that the Minnesota game was an unfortunate experience that played out for everyone to see. Pryor said nobody was going to shy away from it, but that sometimes you have to have tough moments to get to the other side. Freeman, the veteran first baseman who had been one of the people consoling Rushing in the dugout, offered perhaps the most revealing perspective. He described the second inning as complete chaos. He said it felt like a roller coaster that was losing pins as you are doing loops. It just felt chaotic. But Freeman also said something else. He said he just wished people could see the Dalton Rushing that is not on TV, because that guy is awesome. 5 days after the incident, Rushing sat down for a nearly 10-minute interview with the California Post. He sat backward in his chair, arms propped on the backrest, and struck a tone of contrition as he reflected on what he described as perhaps the lowest point of his MLB career. He said, "You never want to have a pitcher feel like you do not have their back. Especially," he said, "when that pitcher is Shohei Ohtani." He replayed everything. The lack of synergy on pitch calls, the cross-up on the passed ball, the challenge he should have supported. He said it was not at all how they wanted to be viewed as battery mates. He said whether it was Shohei or any of their starting pitchers or any of the guys in the bullpen, you never want to be viewed like that. And then Rushing said something that revealed the full weight of what Ohtani's words had meant to him. He called Ohtani the greatest player to play this game. He said Ohtani has every right to call whatever he would like and to attack the way that he wants to on the mound, because no one on this earth can tell him that he does not know what he is doing out there. He said he had talked to Ohtani a lot since the game, and that never in a million years could you ever have a bad thing to say about a guy like that. Never in a million years could you ever feel like a player like that is in the wrong. Then Rushing took full ownership. He said it was up to him, as a young guy, to wear the situation, wear it on his chest, get over it, move past it, and make sure they allow a guy like Ohtani to do what he wants to do. He said whether he was right, whether Ohtani was right, whether they were both wrong or both right, it did not matter. He said it was his job, whether he was 25 years old or 35 years old, to say that this was his fault and that he needed to grow from it. Roberts confirmed that Rushing would remain as Ohtani's catcher for the next start. The Dodgers were not pulling the plug. They were not calling up a replacement or making panicked phone calls to other front offices. They were doubling down on the 25-year-old they had drafted 4 years earlier, trusting that the worst night of his career might also be the most important. And then came the moment that closed the circle. Days after the incident, the Dodgers traveled to San Diego for a weekend series against the Padres. Rushing had been out of the lineup for one of the games, given a day to reset mentally. But when he returned, he picked up right where his April self had left off. He stepped to the plate and launched a home run that cleared the fence with authority. As he rounded the bases and approached the dugout, the first person off the bench to greet him was Shohei Ohtani. Not Roberts, not Freeman, not Pryor. Ohtani, the man who never talks, was the first one there, hand extended, smile wide, congratulating the young catcher who had just endured the most public humiliation of his career. Rushing told reporters afterward that there were no hard feelings on either end. He said they had talked extensively in the days between the Twins game and the Padres series, and that the conversations had been productive and genuine. It was vintage Ohtani. No press conference, no grand gesture, just showing up first when it mattered most. The internet had spent a week speculating about whether Ohtani resented Rushing, whether the relationship was broken, whether the Dodgers would have to trade for a veteran catcher before the deadline to protect their ace. And Ohtani answered all of it without saying a single word. He just stood up and walked to the top step of the dugout before anyone else could get there. Because that is who Shohei Ohtani is. He does not give speeches about leadership. He does not lecture younger players about respect. He does not demand accountability through confrontation. He leads by being the first one to show up, the first one to extend a hand, the first one to move forward. But make no mistake about what happened on June 24th. That night in Minneapolis was not just a crossed-up pitch and a passed ball. It was the night that the quietest force in baseball decided that silence was not enough, that his young catcher needed to hear him, not through an interpreter, not through diplomats, not through coaches, but through action, through the crack of a 100-mile-per-hour fastball that Ohtani himself called, through 6 innings of dominance that said, more clearly than any words ever could, "This is who I am, and this is how we are going to do this." Dave Roberts said that Ohtani's style is to communicate by example, and on that night, the example was deafening. In 4 innings of self-called pitches, Ohtani did not just salvage a game, he taught a lesson. He showed Rushing what it looks like when the greatest player alive trusts himself completely, and in doing so, he gave Rushing something that no amount of coaching or film study ever could. He gave him a front-row seat to perfection, and the humility to recognize the distance between where he was and where he needed to be. Rushing is still growing, he still runs hot, he still breaks bats and slides hard and says things that make headlines. But after June 24th, there is something different in the way he talks about the game. There is a weight to his words that was not there before, a maturity that was forged not in a meeting room or a film session, but on a baseball field in Minneapolis, behind home plate, watching a man who never talks finally say everything that needed to be said. And the way he said it was the most Ohtani thing of all. He did not raise his voice, he did not point fingers, he did not sulk or pout or demand a different catcher. He just called his own pitches, struck out the side, and then told the world, calmly and quietly, that there are 2 ways to communicate. One is by words, the other is by example. And for one unforgettable night in Minnesota, Shohei Ohtani chose both. Like and subscribe for more baseball documentaries. Until next time.